Housewife, the mother of 3 children, could become a criminal profile. Pat Brown, in her latest book, The Profiler: My Life Hunting Serial Killers and Psychopaths, Pat Brown opens up about her case files. Thank you so much for joining us. Pat Brown, good morning.
Good morning, Ann.
So tell us what happened, how this all worked, because in 1990, here you are at home, you've got 3 kids, you're trying to make ends meet.
Right.
You're a housewife.
Exactly.
How did this end up to be the beginning of the life you have now?
It wasn't the plan. I mean, I really had no clue that this was coming down the pike here. I had 3 children, and I had a great life. I was a homeschooling mom, and I did interpret at the hospital, sign language interpreting at nights, especially in the emergency room. And everything was going great. But I was in the process of adopting my 3rd child, and they wouldn't let anybody live in my house who didn't have their fingerprints taken at the police station. And I used to have a lot of international students, and they say, well, I don't really think I'm going to do that. So I didn't have my rooms rented, and that's how we made money for me to stay home.
You had boarders.
I had boarders in the house, and it was always went well. And so one of my friends said, would you rent to this guy that I'm dating now? And he just started working at my place of employment.
And what happened is, something happened in your town.
Yeah, and he seemed like a nice guy, and he was personable. And he did get fingerprinted, and he came back clean. But 4 weeks later, a woman was jogging at dusk on the path near my house, and she was brutally murdered, raped and murdered. And this man had just been at the other end of the path, and my friend had just broken up with him, and he was very upset, and he walked that path from her house to my house.
How did you know that?
He told me. I actually asked him if he was on the path, and he said yes, he was, and he gave some bizarre explanation for why he left the path exactly at the point where this girl was murdered.
So what made you all of a sudden become suspicious?
Because he was really strange. I mean, within the 4 weeks he lived there, I'm going, there's something wrong with this guy. He started telling us bizarre stories. He was lying all the time.
You gathered information, like what kind of information?
Well, eventually I got so concerned about this, I said, I have to find if there's anything in his, that's really kind of evidence, physical evidence. So when he went to work, I put on some gloves, and I went into his room, which, by the way, was legal. Some people say, you can't do that. Yes, you can legally when you rent in your own home. And I looked through everything in his room. I looked through his trash, and I found that he'd thrown away his pants, brand new pants, thrown away his shoes, brand new, threw away a shirt that was all shredded, like the briar bushes got hold of it, when he was there.
So you became suspicious, and you went to the police.
Very suspicious. And I went to the police with this information and said, I'm not saying he did this. I'm just saying he moved into town 4 weeks ago. He was walking that path. He has very bizarre behavior. And here's the information.
And this became for you kind of the launch point into this life where you have become a profiler of major cases. People bring you in, a lot of times the families themselves want someone to help them.
And I understand what's going on with these families, because this is what happened to me. I really wasn't planning to do anything but, okay, here's the information, bye, see ya. And then they didn't even bring the man in for an interview. And I thought, how could you ignore this? So it took me 6 years, and the case was reopened, and the later investigator said, how could they have ignored this? I'm like, yeah, but it's been 6 years. So when families are frustrated, I say to them, well, talk with the police department that you're working with, and if they're willing to have me come in, then I will come in. And that's what I do.
So this is an example of how you think that the system is broken. I mean, I know you talk about the BTK killer who sort of became notorious.
31 years later he was caught, but in between the time that he started and the 31 years he was caught, how many women died?
So what is the solution in terms of what you've seen then, coming from where you've come to where you've gone now, what is going to fix the system?
Well, here's my idea. What I've found is that we have very, very dedicated detectives and police officers. Absolutely, they're working their butts off. They really are. But they have so many cases. They're overwhelmed. They don't get proper training a lot of times. They just go on the job and they're just kind of winging it until maybe they get a week here and a week there. So what happens is they don't have time to actually sit down, analyze these cases, do the crime scene analysis, profile them so that maybe they go in the right direction. So they're sort of guessworking it and just trying to get information, and then the case doesn't get solved. Then they bring me in 5 years later, and I profile it, and they go, wow, we didn't see that, but now where's the evidence? So I'm trying to get profilers in the first 24 to 48 hours, or do the training for the detectives. So I'm expanding training for detectives so they can do their own work. And that's what I hope. I'll just solve more cases, and less people will get killed.
Pat Brown, on that note, Pat Brown on a mission.
Thank
you so much this morning.
Thanks, Ann.
And the book is called The Profiler. And coming up next, tips on making your summer evening